Hey, you know what time it is. Woo! Get into it, yes! We're back! We're back with Storytime with Chris. Hi, y'all. Sorry about yesterday. There's a reason why I love Wednesdays. Because something good without fail, whether I expect it or not, something good always happens to me on Wednesdays. And yesterday I was able to have a really good therapy session before going out with a couple friends to see 2 new movies. If anybody knows me well enough, I love international films. More so a fan of French films, Japanese films. Love a good Australian film. Or a Spanish film. Mostly South American films were like, I don't know, I just love international films. I think it's indicative of us as people. Just because we're American doesn't mean that we should not go out into the world and explore other countries and other cultures' art and media. And I saw 2 incredible movies, Godzilla Minus One, which acts as a prequel to the original Godzilla film of 1954. That's when Godzilla was first created, was 1954. And I was 4 or 5 years old when I watched that on VHS. And it was so terrifying, but so exciting in the same breath. And it was a treat to watch. And to be able to see a new Japanese exclusive Godzilla film, because we have the American Godzilla movies with Kong and all of them from Legendary Pictures and Toho Studios, which Toho Studio is the studio that Godzilla comes from. And next year will be Godzilla's 70th birthday, which is amazing that in my lifetime, I get to be around to see a new Godzilla movie that actually is good. But I'll talk about that in a separate video, which the second movie I got to see was potentially, because there have been reports from the man himself that he is continuing to work and is working on his next project. I got to see Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron, aka How Do You Live in the Japanese release, because the American release, they changed it to The Boy and the Heron. Y'all, that movie was incredible. It's very beautiful visually. It's stunning. It's a moving piece of art. And it's a piece of storytelling that is not typical of the Western style of storytelling, where you have typically 3 to 4 acts. You have the beginning, the conflict, the height of said conflict, and then the ending. The conclusion to where things trickle down. It kind of is like boom, 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 boom. That, or like boom, 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 or boom, 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 boom. Certain movies in film hit certain beats, and this movie does not play into those stereotypical beats. It's a moving piece of art, y'all. If you have no plans for the weekend, go see those 2 movies. That's all I'm gonna say, because we're here for story time. But I had to get that off my chest. As a lover of art, and as somebody who has been deeply inspired for years, and I mean since I was a kid, by Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, who's another well-known director of Studio Ghibli, go see this movie. You would be doing yourself a disservice by not going to see a beautiful piece of art. So, now that I got that off my chest, we're going to get back to our story with The High King, which is the 5th book in the series of the Prydain Chronicles. And then I got to do a second reading of Storytime on Instagram. So, oh goodness, my glasses are filthy. As I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max and relaxing, chillaxing time, bean time, scheme time, in between time, study time, break time, CP time, any time that you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and many, many more in between. So, we're back. And our group of heroes have gotten a very distressing prophecy that Henwin, the oracular pig, is unable to discern. And even Queen Okren, the evil sorceress, has volunteered to help get the legendary enchanted sword of Dernwyn back from Aurorn Deathlord, the evil god of the dead. She's offered to go get it back, but Prince Gwydion is like, no, I don't want any help from you because I don't know if I can trust you. Which, fun fact, children, if you don't have trust, you have nothing. If you can't trust somebody, you have nothing. So always be vigilant and have an excellent judge of character about certain people. It's important. Gotcha. Chapter 3, The Prophecy. And no, I don't own the music in the background that you're listening to at the moment. 1, 2. All right, that's better. The companions hastened to the stable. As Gurgi had told them, one of King Rune's horses was missing. Of Okryn there was no trace. Let me saddle Melalas, Tarn urged Gwydion. I shall try to overtake her. She's going straight to a Newfound, burst out Fluter. I never trusted that woman. Great Beelern, who knows what treachery she plans? She's off to feather her own nest, you can be sure of it. Okryn goes more likely to her death, answered Gwydion, his face grim as he looked toward the hills and the leafless trees. There is no safety for her beyond Caerdalban. I would protect her, but dare not delay my quest to seek her now. He turned to Dalman. I must know Henwin's prophecy. It is my only guide. The enchanter nodded and led the companions to the cottage. The aged man still held the parchment and the splintered letter sticks. Now he cast them on the table and gazed at them for a long moment before he spoke. Henwin has told us what she can. All I fear that we shall ever learn from her. I have again studied the symbols she pointed out, hoping against hope I had misread them. His expressions was withdrawn, his eyes lowered, and he spoke with difficulty, as if each word wrenched his heart. I asked how Dernwyn might be recovered. Hear the answer given us. Ask sooner, mute stone and voiceless rock to speak. Such is Henwin's message as I've read it from the first letter stick, Dalban said. Whether it is a refusal to speak a prophecy in and of itself, or a warning to ask no further, I cannot be sure, but the symbols of the second letter stick spell out the fate of Dernwyn itself. Dalban continued. And the enchanter's words filled Tarn with cold anguish that struck deep as a sword thrust. Quenched with Dernwyn's flame, vanished its power, night turned to noon, and rivers burn with frozen fire, ere Dernwyn be regained. The ancient man bowed his head then and was silent for a minute. The third stick, he said at last, was destroyed before Henwin could complete her message. She might have told us more, but judging from the first two, we would have cause for no more hope than we have now. The prophecy mocks us, Tarn said. Hen told us truly. We could as well have asked stones for help.
And got as much sense from them, cried Alonwe. Hen could have come straight out and said we'll never get Dernwyn back. Night can't be noon, and that's the end of it.
In all my travels, added Fluter, I've never noticed even a small creek burning, not to mention a river. The prophecy is doubly impossible. And yet, said King Rune with innocent eagerness, it would be an amazing thing to see. I wish it could happen. I fear you shall not see it come to pass, King of Mona, Dalban said heavily. Gwydion, who had been sitting thoughtfully at the table and turning the splintered rods back and forth in his hands, rose and spoke to the companions. Henwin's prophecy is disheartening, he said, and far from what I had hoped, but when prophecies give no help, men must find it of themselves. His hands clenched and snapped the fragment of ashwood. As long as life and breath are mine, I will seek Dernwyn. The prophecy does not change my plans, but makes them only more urgent. Then let us go with you, Tarn said, rising to face Gwydion. Take our strength until your own returns. Exactly so, Fluter jumped to his feet. I'll pay no heed whether rivers burn or not. Ask stones to speak, I'll ask Aurorn himself. He'll keep no secrets from a flam. Gwydion shook his head. His name is Fluter Flam, okay? Going back to what Fluter said. His name is Fluter Flam. Put some respect on his name. Gwydion shook his head. In this task, the more men, the greater risk. It is done best alone. If any life can be staked against Arorn Deathlord, it must be mine.
Taran bowed, for Gwydion's tone forbade dispute. If such is your will, he said. But what if Ka were to fly ahead to Anuvan? Send him first. He will go swiftly and bring back whatever knowledge he can gain.
Gwydion looked shrewdly at Taran and nodded approval. You have found some wisdom in your wanderings, assistant peacekeeper. Your plan is sound. Ka may serve me better than all your swords, but I shall not await him here. To do so would cost me too much time. Let him spy out Anuvan as far as he is able, and then find me at King Smoit's castle at Cantreve Catafor. Smoit's realm lies on my path to Anuvan, and thus my journey will be half accomplished when Ka rejoins me.
At least we can ride with you as far as King Smoit's castle, Taran said, and guard you until you are well on your way. Between here and Cantreve Catafor, Arorn's men may be abroad still seeking your death.
The foul villains, cried the bard. Treacherous murderers! They'll have a taste of my sword this time. Let them attack us. I hope they do.
A harp string snapped with a loud crack that set the instrument a-jangling.
Ah, yes, well, is only a manner of speaking.
Fluter said sheepishly,
I hope we don't come upon them at all. They could be troublesome and delay our journey.
No one has considered the inconvenience to me, said Glue. The former giant had come out of the scullery and looked peevishly around him.
Weasel, muttered Fluter. Dernwin is gone. We don't know if our lives are at stake, and he frets about inconvenience. He's a little man indeed, and always was.
Since no one has mentioned it, said Eilonwy, it seems I'm not being asked to come along. Very well. I shan't insist.
You too have gained wisdom, princess, said Dalbin. Your days on Mona were not ill spent.
Of course, Eilonwy went on, after you leave. The thought may strike me that it's a pleasant day for a short ride to go picking wildflowers, which might be hard to find, especially since it's almost winter. Not that I'd be following you, you understand? But I might by accident lose my way and mistakenly happen to catch up with you. But then it would be too late for me to come home, through no fault of my own.
Gwydion's haggard face broke into a smile. So be it, princess. What I cannot prevent, I accept. Ride with me all those who choose, but no farther than Smoit's stronghold at Caer Cadarn. Ah, princess, Cole sighed, shaking his head, I will not gainsay Lord Gwydion whatever, but it is hardly the conduct of a young lady to force her own way thus.
Certainly not, Eilonwy agreed. That's the first thing Queen Teleria taught me. A lady doesn't insist on having her own way. The next thing you know, it all works out somehow without one's even trying. I thought I'd never learn, though it's really quite easy once you get the knack of it.
Without further delay, Taran lifted Ka from his fireside perch and carried him to the doorway. This time the crow did not clack his beak or gabble impudently. Instead of his customary scoldings, hoarse quackings, and mischievous foolery, Ka hunched on Taran's wrist, cocked a beady, attentive eye, listening closely while Taran carefully explained the task. Taran raised his arm and Ka flapped his glossy wings in farewell.
Anuvan!
Ka croaked.
Dernwin! Ah! Ah!
The crow flew aloft. Within moments, Ka was high over Caer Dallben. The wind bore him like a leaf, and he hung poised above the watching companions. Then, with a roguish flirt of his wings, Ka sped northeastward. Taran strained his eyes to follow his flight until the crow vanished into the looming clouds in sadness and disquiet. Taran at last turned away. Ka, he was sure, would be alert to the perils of the journey. The arrows of the huntsmen, the cruel talons and lashing beaks of the Gwithates, Arorn's fierce winged messengers. More than once had Gwithates attacked the companions, and even the fledglings could be dangerous. Taran recalled from his boyhood the young Gwithates whose life he had saved, and he well remembered the bird's sharp claws. Despite Ka's gallant heart, his sharp wits, Taran feared for the safety of the crow, and feared still more for Gwydion's quest, and to him came the foreboding that an even heavier fate might ride on Ka's outspread wings. It had been agreed that when the travelers neared Great Avren, King Rune would escort the disgruntled Glue to the ship anchored in the river, there to await his return. For Rune was determined to ride with Gwydion to Caer Cadarn. Glue like neither cooling his heels on the swaying vessel nor sleeping on the hard pebbles of the shore, but the protests of the former giant could not move the King of Mona to change his plan. While Gwydion held at last hurried counsel with Dalbin, the companions began leading the horses from the stable. The wise Melangar, Gwydion's white golden-maned steed, waited calmly for her master. Melalas, Taran's stallion, snorted impatiently, pawed the ground. Eilonwy was already mounted on her favorite, the bay mare Luogor. In a fold of her cloak, the princess carried her most treasured possession, the golden sphere that glowed brightly when she cupped it in her hands. The golden bauble. The parolin. The golden parolin. There we go. I'm thinking of the Castle of Lyra. It's been a while.
I'm leaving that uncomfortable crown behind, Eilonwy declared. There's no use for it at all, except to hold down your hair, and that's hardly worth the blisters. But I'd sooner walk on my hands than go without my bauble. Besides, if we need a light, we shall have one. That's much more practical than a hoop on top of your head.
In a saddlebag, she packed the embroidery made for Taran, intending to finish it along the way.
Perhaps, Eilonwy said, I might fix the color of Henwin's eyes while I'm at it.
Fluter's mount was the huge, tawny cat, Lion, herself tall as a horse. Seeing the bard, she purred loudly, and Fluter could barely keep the powerful animal from knocking him down with her nuzzling. "Gently, old girl!" cried the bard, as Lion thrust her great head between his neck and shoulder. "I know you want a tune on my harp. I shall play one later, I promise you." Glue had recognized Lion immediately.
That's not fair, he sniffed. By all rights, she belongs to me.
"Yes," replied Fluter, "if you count feeding her those vile potions you once brewed to make her grow bigger. If you care to ride her, you're welcome to try. Though I warn you, Lion has a memory longer than her tail." Lion indeed had begun lashing her tail at the sight of Glue. She towered over the pudgy little man. Her yellow eyes blazed, her whiskers twitched, her tufted ears went flat against her head, and from her throat came a sound quite unlike her greeting to the bard. Very angry cat. Fluter quickly strummed a melody on his harp. Lion turned her eyes from Glue, and her mouth curved in an enormous smile, and she blinked fondly at the bard. However, Glue's face had gone paler, and he edged away from the cat.
"When I was a giant," Glue murmured, "things were considerably better managed."
King Rune saddled his dapple gray steed, since Cole, who had also decided to accompany Gwydion, would ride the sorrel mare Lamre, foal of Melalas and Luogor. Glue had no choice but to climb up behind Gurgi on his shaggy pony, a companionship unwelcome to all three. Taran, meanwhile, helped Cole rummage in the stables, forge, and tool sheds for weapons. "Few enough of them they are," said Cole. "These spears have served me well as bean poles," the stout warrior added. "I had hoped never to use them for another purpose. Alas, the only blade I can give Gwydion is rusted from propping up one of the apple trees. As for helmets, there are none save my leather cap, and the sparrows have a nest in it. I shall not disturb them, but my own pat is tough as leather," Cole said, winking. "It can last me to Caer-Cadaern and back." "And you, my lad," Cole went on cheerfully. Excuse me. Though he had not failed to notice Taran's troubled frown. "I remember a day when an assistant pigkeeper would have been all flash and fire to ride with Lord Gwydion. Now you look as glum as a frost-bitten turnip." Taran smiled. "I myself would ride to Anuvin if Gwydion allowed me. What you say is true, old friend. For the boy I was, this would have been a bold adventure. Excuse me. Full of glory. This much have I learned. A man's life weighs more than glory, and a price paid in blood is a heavy reckoning." "My heart is not easy," Taran added. "Long ago you made your way to Anuvin to rescue Henwin after she had been stolen from you. Tell me, what chance is Gwydion alone in Aurorn's realm?" "No man has better," said Cole, shouldering the spears. He was gone from the shed before Taran realized the old warrior had not really answered him at all. Caer-Dalbin lay far behind them, and the day was darkening when the companions made camp deep in the shadows of the forest. Eilonwy happily flung herself to the ground.
Oh, it's been so long since I've slept on comfortable roots and rocks, she cried. What a pleasant change from goose feathers.
Gwydion allowed a fire to be built, and while Cole saw to the mounts, Gurgi opened his wallet of food to share out provisions. For the most part, the companions were silent, chilled, and stiff after the long day's journey. King Rune, however, had lost none of his good spirits. As the travelers huddled closer to the pale flames, Rune picked up a twig and scratched busily in the earth, covering the ground before him with a spiderweb of lines. "About that seawall," said Rune, "I think I see how it went wrong." "Yes, exactly so. Now here's the way to do it." From across the fire, Taran saw Rune's eyes brightly eager on his face, the familiar boyish grin. But Rune, Taran sensed, was no longer the feckless princeling he had known on the Isle of Mona. As Rune absorbed in the tasks he had planned, so Taran had been caught up in his own labors at forge, loom, and potter's wheel. And if Rune had found manhood in ruling a kingdom, Taran had found the same in toiling among the staunch folk of the free Kamots. He watched Rune with new affection. The king of Mona spoke on, and Taran's interests were drawn to the scratchings on the ground. He studied them as Rune continued. Taran smiled. One thing had not changed, he realized. As usual, the king of Mona's intentions were somewhat beyond the king of Mona's skill. "I fear your wall may tumble if you build it thus," Taran said with a kindly laugh. "See this part here?" he pointed. "The heavier stones must be sunk deeper, and here—" "Amazing!" reclaimed Rune, snapping his fingers. "Quite right. You shall come to Mona and help me finish it." He began scratching new lines so vigorously he nearly pitched himself into the fire.
Oh, great and kindly master,
cried Gurgi, who had been listening closely without altogether understanding what the two comrades had been discussing.
Oh, clever scannings and plannings, Gurgi wishes he too had wisdoms of wise speakings.
Gwydion warned them silence. "Our fire is risk enough without adding noise to it. I can only hope Aurorn's huntsmen are not abroad. We are too few to withstand even a handful of them. They are not common warriors," Gwydion added, seeing Rune's questioning expression, "but an evil brotherhood. Slay one of their band, and the strength of the others grows that much greater." Taran nodded. "They are as much to be feared as the Cauldron-born," he cautioned Rune, "the deathless, voiceless creatures that guarded Anuvan. Perhaps more to be feared. The Cauldron-born cannot be slain, yet their power dwindles if they journey too far or stay too long beyond Aurorn's realm." Rune blinked and Gurgi fell silent. Glancing behind him uncomfortably, memory of the ruthless Cauldron-born turned Taran's thoughts once more to Henwin's prophecy. "The flame of Durnwin quenched," Taran murmured. "Yet how shall Aurorn achieve this? For all his power, I will not believe he can even draw the blade." "Prophecy is more than the words that shape it," Gwydion said. "Seek the meaning that underlines it. For us, the flame of Durnwin, there we go, will be as good as quenched if Aurorn keeps it from my hands. Its power will indeed vanish, for it all may avail us should the blade be locked forever in his treasure hoard."
"Treasure?"
said Glue, stopping his munchings only long enough to speak the word. "The Dark Lord's domain is as much a treasure house as a stronghold of evil," Gwydion said. "Long has it been filled with all the fair and useful things Aurorn has stolen from Prydain. These treasures do not serve him. His purpose is to deprive, to keep their use from men, to sap our strength by denying us what might yield a richer harvest than any of us here has known." Gwydion paused. "Is this not death in but another guise?" "I have been told," Taran said, "the treasure troves of Anuvan hold all that men could wish for. Plows, they are said to be that work of themselves, scythes that reap with no hand to guide them, magical tools and more." Taran went on, "For Aurorn stole the craft secrets of metalsmiths and potters, the lore of herdsmen and farmers. This knowledge, too, lies locked forever in his hoard." Gwydion sucked his teeth. The morsel of food stayed untouched in his chubby fingers. For a long while he said nothing. At last he cleared his throat.
"I meant to forgive your slights and humiliations. It would not have happened when I was a giant, I assure you. But no matter. I pardon you all. In token of my goodwill, I too shall journey with you."
Gwydion looked at him sharply. "Perhaps you shall." he said quietly after a time. No question of it now, Fluter snorted. The little weasel hopes to sniff out something for himself. I can see his nose trembling. I never thought the day would come when should want him at our side, but I think that's safer than having him at our backs. Glue smiled blandly. I forgive you, too. And that is where we shall end this story for today. Lots of build-up. Getting all the necessary pieces together to see what happens. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think we got Taran, Eilonwy, Fluter, Gurgi, Cole, Prince Gwydion, Glue, and... yeah, that's all in the party. It's like 7 people. Do you think they'll all get there together? Do you think they will all come together to defeat Arorn and step into the realm of Anuvin? Do you think? What do you think will happen next? See you next time. Bye-bye.